It is the middle of July, and your garden looks nothing like it did 4 weeks ago. The June flowers are finished. The tall garden phlox is dusted with a strange white powder. The hostas under the maple tree have holes chewed through every leaf overnight. The roses look tired. The porch containers wilt by noon, no matter how faithfully you water them. And last night it rained again, which somehow made everything worse. So why does a healthy, well-tended garden fall apart in the same month every single year? Because 5 separate problems arrive at once, and most gardeners fight one, while the other 4 do quiet damage you will not see until August. After more than 40 years of digging in the dirt, I can tell you July breaks more gardens than any other month. So today we are going to walk the whole garden together, the way I would walk it with a neighbor, and deal with all 5. The heat and the watering, the rain that feeds disease, the fungus, the pests, the border that stopped blooming, and those poor porch pots slowly cooking in the sun. One walk, every fix, and almost all of it done with simple things you already have in the kitchen and the shed. Let's start where every July morning starts, out in the heat. Stand in a sunny flower bed on a July afternoon, and the soil surface under your feet can reach 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Think about that for a moment. The top 2 inches of ground, where so many fine feeder roots live, is hot enough to hurt your bare hand. The leaves above are losing moisture faster than the roots below can pull it up. And so, every afternoon around 2 or 3 o'clock, the whole garden droops. The phlox goes limp. The hydrangea leaves curl down at the edges like they are folding their hands. The hostas flatten out as if they have simply given up. And every instinct in your body says, grab the hose. Please put the hose down. Not yet, anyway. Afternoon wilt in July heat is usually normal. The plant is closing the tiny pores on its leaves to hold on to water, the same way you would close the windows on a scorching day. It is managing itself, and it has been doing this longer than any of us have been gardening. Watch that same drooping phlox at 7 in the evening as the air cools. The leaves lift, the stems straighten. By morning, it looks like nothing ever happened. Now, if you had rushed out at 3 o'clock and soaked soil that was already moist, you would have waterlogged the root zone and set the table for root rot. And root rot is the one problem a heat-stressed plant truly cannot come back from. A wilted plant recovers overnight. A drowned one does not recover at all. So here is the watering routine that has served me for 4 decades. Water before 8 in the morning while the soil is cool and the roots can actually drink. But check first. Push 2 fingers about 2 inches down into the soil beside the plant. If you feel any moisture down there, walk away with a clear conscience. If it is bone dry 2 inches down, then water deeply, right at the base of the plant, slow and steady for 30 seconds to a minute. Not a quick spray across the tops of the leaves. A long, patient soak at the soil line where the roots are waiting. 2 or 3 deep soakings a week will beat a daily light sprinkle every time, because deep water pulls the roots downward into cool, protected earth. Shallow daily sprinkling does the opposite. It keeps the roots up near the surface, right in that 120-degree oven, and then you wonder why the plant struggles. And if you do only one job in the garden this weekend, make it mulch. The old market gardeners knew this, and the Amish farm families I grew up near in dairy country still do it without a second thought. 2 to 3 inches of shredded bark or wood chips over every bed cuts your watering needs by around 40%. Mulch shades the soil, keeps the root zone 10 to 15 degrees cooler than bare ground, holds Monday's deep soak in the soil until Wednesday, and smothers the weed seed sprouting in every bare patch right now. One afternoon spreading mulch buys you weeks of easier watering through July and August. Frugal, simple, and it works. One more word about heat before we move on, and pay attention to this one because it trips up even experienced gardeners. Do not fertilize a heat-stressed plant. When something looks tired, the loving instinct is to feed it. But fertilizer forces new growth, and new growth in July is soft, thin-skinned, and defenseless. Those baby leaves have none of the thick, waxy coating that protects mature foliage from sun and heat. Pushing tender new growth in a heat wave is like sending a newborn out at noon without a bonnet. The new leaves scorch, the plant burns energy it cannot spare, and you have made a tired plant exhausted. Feed the perennials in spring and again in early fall. In July, the only things that touch that soil are water and mulch. Now, about that rain. It took me years of ruined flocks to learn what I'm about to tell you. You would think July rain is a pure gift. The garden is thirsty, the sky opens up, everything gets a free deep soak. But there is one particular kind of July rain that does more harm than good, and it is the pattern running across the whole eastern half of the country for weeks at a time. You know it well. Hot, sticky days in the upper 80s or 90s. Then around 10 at night, thunder rolls in and it pours for 2 or 3 hours. The rain quits before dawn. The morning comes up warm and steamy, the garden dripping, the air thick enough to wear, and by noon you are back in the 90s, ready to do it all again tomorrow night. That pattern is a fungal paradise. The leaves never fully dry between storms. The air between crowded plants sits still and humid because there is no breeze moving through the border. The soil surface stays warm and wet, which happens to be the perfect incubator for every fungal spore waiting in last year's leaf litter. And your plants are already run down from the heat, their protective coatings thinned, their defenses low. Every spore that lands finds an open door instead of a locked one. So the storm you were grateful for on Tuesday becomes the mildew you were fighting on Sunday. You cannot turn off the rain and you cannot dry out the air. But there are three things you absolutely can control, and they decide whether your garden rides out this pattern or collapses into disease by August. First, and most important, airflow. This costs nothing and prevents more disease than every bottle of fungicide on the store shelf put together. Walk your borders today and look for any clump dense enough to trap damp air in its middle. Phlox, bee balm, asters, roses. Reach into the center of the plant and cut every third stem out at ground level. Open up the middle so a breeze can pass through. A phlox with 12 stems packed shoulder to shoulder is a little humidity chamber, a greenhouse for mildew. The same plant with 8 stems standing at a friendly distance dries twice as fast after every storm. Old-time growers thinned their plants the way they thinned their carrots, without sentiment, because they knew crowding invites trouble. Second, stop all overhead watering during a rainy stretch. The sky is delivering plenty. If it stormed last night, your soil 2 inches down is almost certainly saturated, and you can prove it with the 2-finger test we just talked about. Adding hose water on top of rain creates standing moisture that the roots cannot use, and the fungus loves. During a week of nightly storms, the kindest thing your hose can do is stay coiled. Third, clean house at the base of every plant. Fallen leaves, spent petals, and soggy plant litter resting against a wet stem are the front door for crown rot, botrytis, and soft rot. Rake it out. Clear a ring of clean, bare ground about 2 inches wide around every stem so air can reach the crown. This takes 5 minutes for a whole border, and it removes the staging ground where the vast majority of fungal infections begin. My grandmother called it keeping the plant's collar clean, and she was not wrong. If that nightly rain has been running for a week or more where you live, keep watching, because the diseases it feeds are arriving in gardens right now, and this next part is exactly how to recognize each one and fight it with things as simple as milk from the refrigerator. There are 3 infections to check for on this morning's walk. The first is powdery mildew, and you already know it by sight. A white or grey powder coating the leaves of phlox, bee balm, roses, zinnias, and ninebark, as if someone shook flour over the garden. Unlike most fungal diseases, powdery mildew does not even need wet leaves. It thrives on plain humidity, warm days followed by cooler nights. That white coating is the fungus itself, living on the leaf surface, stealing nutrients and blocking the sunlight the leaf needs to feed the plant. It rarely kills anything outright, but it weakens the plant, steals the bloom, and makes the whole border look neglected from now until September. Prevention starts with the thinning we just did, because moving air is mildew's worst enemy. Then there is the old baking soda spray. 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of liquid dish soap, 1 gallon of water, sprayed on the healthy leaves every 7 to 10 days before mildew shows up. It changes the surface chemistry of the leaf so the fungus cannot settle in. And if mildew has already arrived, reach for the milk. 1 part whole milk to 9 parts water, sprayed on the affected leaves in direct morning sunlight. The proteins in milk react with sunlight and destroy powdery mildew on contact. This sounds like folk wisdom, and it is. Dairy farmers have used it for generations, but researchers at the University of Western Australia tested it and found it worked as well as the chemical fungicides. Spray every 5 to 7 days until the white recedes, and always in morning sun, never evening shade, because the sunlight is what makes it work. The second disease is black spot, and if you grow roses in a rainy July, you may be looking at it already. Circular black spots with ragged yellow halos on the rose leaves. The spores spend the winter on fallen infected leaves under the bush, and every splash of rain kicks them up onto fresh foliage, which is exactly why the nightly storm pattern sets off huge outbreaks. Infected leaves yellow and drop, and an untreated bush can stand completely bare by August. The fight here is mostly housekeeping. Pick up every fallen rose leaf and do not put them in the compost pile, because that just saves the spores for next year. Bag them and send them out with the trash. Keep a good mulch under the roses so rain cannot splash bare soil onto the lower leaves. Water at the base, never over the top. Then strip off every spotted leaf you can see on the bush and on the ground, and protect what is left. Neem oil sprayed on the healthy foliage every 7 to 10 days, applied in the morning before the day reaches 90 degrees, is the best option for a natural garden. Understand the goal. You are not curing the sick leaves. You are guarding the healthy ones so the bush keeps enough foliage to feed itself. The third is rust, and it is easy to identify once you flip a leaf over. Yellow or orange freckles on the top of the leaf, and underneath powdery pustules the color of an old rusty hinge. It shows up on hollyhocks, daylilies, roses, snapdragons, and fuchsias, and it spreads on moisture, riding the same nightly rain as everything else. Remove every affected leaf and throw it away. Never compost it. Then protect the clean foliage with a sulfur-based fungicide or that same neem oil. And a special note for hollyhock lovers, because those old dooryard flowers are rust magnets. Strip off the lowest leaves early in the summer before rust even appears. The bottom leaves always get infected first because they sit closest to the soil where the spores wait. Taking them off early is like pulling up the drawbridge. Across all 3 diseases, the pattern is the same, and once you see it, you will never forget it. Airflow prevents. Early eyes limit the spread. Removing infected material breaks the cycle. And the right spray at the right time of day protects what remains. That time of day matters more than the spray itself. Always in the morning so the leaves dry in the daytime sun. Spray in the evening and you have left wet foliage sitting overnight in humid air, which is precisely the condition that caused the disease in the first place. Evening spraying can genuinely make things worse. Morning spraying, every time. The same warm, wet weather feeding the fungus is also throwing a party for everything that eats your plants. Every garden pest reproduces faster in warm, moist conditions, so the nightly rain is not just growing mildew, it is hatching a population explosion. 4 culprits are surging right now, and each one has a simple, proven control. The first is the one leaving those overnight holes in your hostas. Slugs and snails, the #1 pest of a wet July garden. They feed in the dark and spend the day hiding under mulch, flower pots, rocks, and boards, so you never catch them in the act. You only find the evidence at breakfast. Ragged holes chewed through the middle of the hosta leaves, impatiens stripped down to bare stems, a row of young seedlings gone entirely. The nightly rain keeps their soft bodies moist, so they travel farther and eat longer than they ever could in dry weather. The safest and most effective control is iron phosphate bait, sold under names like Sluggo. Scatter the pellets around the vulnerable plants according to the label and rest easy, because iron phosphate breaks down into plain soil nutrients and is safe around pets, birds, and grandchildren. For a small bed, the old beer trap still earns its keep. Sink a shallow dish into the soil, pour in an inch of beer, and the slugs climb in and drown. Empty and refill it every couple of days. And there is always the oldest method in the book. Go out at 10 o'clock at night with a flashlight and pick them off the plants by hand. Nobody enjoys it, and it works wonderfully. If this walk through the garden is helping you, take 1 second and hit subscribe. Every week, I share the kind of practical, old-fashioned garden know-how that used to pass over the fence from neighbor to neighbor. The second pest is impossible to miss. Japanese beetles, those metallic green and copper insects skeletonizing the leaves of your roses, grapes, Japanese maples, and linden trees, leaving nothing but lacy veins behind. Their peak emergence runs from late June through the middle of July, and the warm, moist soil from all this rain is perfect for the white grubs that become next year's swarm. For the adults on your plants today, do what the Amish market growers do at first light. Walk out in the cool of early morning while the beetles are still sluggish. Hold a bucket of soapy water under the branch and knock them in. They drop straight down when disturbed, so the bucket catches them beautifully. Neem oil sprayed on the foliage makes the leaves taste terrible, so the beetles move along and dine elsewhere. Now, one firm warning. Do not buy those yellow beetle bag traps hanging in every garden centre. University extension researchers have tested them again and again, and the traps draw 5 to 10 times more beetles into your yard than they catch. The pheromone lure calls in every beetle from the neighbours' properties. Most of them land on your roses instead of in the bag, and your damage gets worse, not better. Skip the trap. And for the long game, apply milky spore to your lawn this summer. It is a natural soil bacterium that infects and destroys the beetle grubs underground. It takes 2 to 3 years to fully establish, and then it keeps working for 15 to 20 years without another application. Patience up front, decades of protection after. The third pest hides inside the flowers themselves. Earwigs, those brown insects with the little pincers on the tail, feed on soft petals at night, especially dahlias, zinnias, marigolds, and roses. You find them in the morning, tucked inside a half-eaten bloom. Wet weather brings them out in droves. The remedy is one my grandmother would recognize instantly. In the evening, set a loosely rolled sheet of damp newspaper on the ground near the affected plants. Earwigs crawl inside overnight looking for a moist, snug hiding place. In the morning, carry the roll to a bucket of soapy water and shake it out. Set a fresh roll every couple of days until the flowers stay whole. The fourth is the aphid, tiny green, black, or white, soft-bodied insects clustering on the newest growth, the flower buds and the stem tips, multiplying at a speed that has to be seen to be believed, especially on roses and dahlias. Start with the simplest tool you own. A strong blast of water from the hose knocks them right off, and most never find their way back. Do it in the morning so the foliage dries through the day, and repeat every 2 or 3 days. For a heavy infestation, spray insecticidal soap directly onto the clusters, and remember it only works on contact, so coat the insects themselves. And make friends with the ladybugs and lacewings in your garden, because both are tremendous aphid hunters. A garden with healthy, beneficial insects rarely suffers an aphid plague at all, which is one more reason to reach for soap and water before anything harsher. With every one of these pests, the whole battle is won or lost on timing. The first week of a surge is manageable with a bucket and a newspaper roll. By the third week, the numbers are overwhelming and the damage is done. So walk the garden every morning, coffee in one hand, cup of soapy water in the other, and deal with what you find while it is still small. 5 minutes a day in July saves the whole garden in August. Now, while you have been busy fighting heat, rain, fungus, and beetles, something quieter happened out in the border, and you may have only just noticed. The garden stopped blooming. The peonies are a memory. The iris finished weeks ago. The roses are resting between flushes. The lilacs and spring shrubs are plain green walls. You look out the kitchen window at a border full foliage and almost no color at all. Gardeners call this the July gap, and it visits every garden that was planted with spring and fall in mind, but nothing in between. The professionals design borders for 3 full seasons of bloom: spring, midsummer, and autumn. Most of us home gardeners, without ever meaning to, only planted 2. The good news is that the fix is sitting at your local garden centre right now, in full bloom, waiting on a bench. This weekend, you can still plant perennials that will settle in fast enough through the summer heat to carry colour all the way to frost, and then come back bigger every year after. 5 plants earn their keep above all others. Coneflowers, the purple echinacea, are sold blooming right now. Buy them in flower, plant them in full sun, water deeply twice a week for the first month, and they bloom clear through October, while the goldfinches feast on the seed heads. Black-eyed Susans, the golden rudbeckia, work exactly the same way. Buy in bloom, plant now, flowers until frost. Reblooming daylilies like the little golden Stella de Oro are flowering on the nursery bench today, and planted this weekend they keep right on going into October. Russian sage wants the meanest spot you have, the hottest, driest, most hopeless corner where nothing else will grow, and it repays you with a blue haze of flowers from July through September, without so much as a drink. And catmint, the variety called Walker's Low, has one trick worth knowing. Shear the nursery plant back by a third the day you plant it, and in 3 weeks it rebounds with a fresh flush of soft lavender blue bloom that lasts through fall. Choose any 3 of these 5, plant them this weekend, and the July gap in your garden closes, not just this year, permanently, because every one of them returns bigger next season. That leaves one last stop on our walk, and it might be the most important one because it is happening right by your front door. The container plants on your porch are struggling, and the advice you have probably heard, water more, is quietly making it worse. The problem is not your watering. The problem is the pot itself. A dark-colored container standing in full sun reaches 130 to 140 degrees on its sun-facing side. The soil inside is literally cooking, and the roots along the edge of that pot are dying from heat, not from thirst. So the plant wilts, and you water it, and the fresh water sits in superheated soil and scalds the root tips, and the plant wilts harder, and you water more. Around and around it goes until the plant dies, and you blame yourself for neglect when you watered plenty all along. You just watered into an oven. 4 fixes starting today. First, favor light-colored containers. White, cream, and honest old-fashioned natural terracotta, which breathes through its walls and cools itself by evaporation, keeping the roots 10 to 15 degrees cooler than plastic or glazed ceramic ever will. If you cannot replace a dark pot this season, wrap the outside in light burlap or pale fabric so it reflects the sun instead of drinking it in. Second, lift every pot off the hot ground. Concrete patios, dark wooden decks, and stone steps soak up heat all day and radiate it straight up into the bottom of the pot, right where the roots gather. A 1-inch air gap from pot feet or a few scraps of wood from the shed drops that bottom temperature by 10 to 20 degrees. Third, for your most exposed containers, use the old double potting trick. Set the planted pot inside a slightly larger empty pot, leaving an inch of space between the walls, and stuff that gap with damp moss or crumpled newspaper. That damp layer works like the walls of a spring house, insulating the inner pot and keeping the roots dramatically cooler. Fourth, and simplest of all, move the pots out of the afternoon sun. A container that bakes from noon to 6 needs a new home with morning sun and afternoon shade. The very same plant, in morning-only light, will perform 3 times better in July because it gets all the light it needs without the afternoon punishment. As for watering the pots, do it every morning until water runs freely from the drainage holes. Not a polite splash across the top inch, a full soak that wets the entire root ball. On the fiercest days, check again mid-afternoon because a container in full sun can dry out completely in 8 hours. And here is a small confession that will save you plants. Throw away the saucer. Every saucer under every outdoor pot holds stagnant water against the bottom of the root ball, where it heats up and breeds rot. Those drainage holes were put there for a reason. Let them drain. Finally, be honest about which plants belong in a hot July container and which never will. Lantana, portulaca, calabrachoa, geraniums, mandevilla, and sweet potato vine shrug off heat and full sun all summer long. Impatiens, fuchsia, lobelia, and begonias melt in July sun no matter what you do for them. If your south-facing porch burns through a pot of impatiens every summer and every May you plant impatiens there again, this is the year to stop. That spot was never an impatiens spot. It is a lantana spot, and the lantana you plant there will look better in September than the impatiens ever looked in June. And so we come back to where we started, That same walk out the door on a July morning, only now you see the whole picture. Check the soil with 2 fingers before you ever turn on the hose. Water deep and early, then leave the wilting plants to manage the afternoon themselves. Thin the crowded clumps so the breeze can do its quiet work against disease. Keep the plant collars clean. Carry the cup of soapy water and pick off the beetles and slugs while their numbers are still small. Plant 3 blooming perennials this weekend to close the gap for good. And move those dark pots into the morning light before they cook one more geranium. July is the hardest month in any garden, and it always will be. Every garden gets heat and rain. What makes July hard is that 5 things happen at once, and until this morning you could only see one of them. Now you see all 5, and every fix takes less time than the worrying did. So tell me in the comments, what is the biggest problem in your garden right now, and what growing zone are you in? That combination tells the whole story, and your answer will help every gardener watching who lives down the road from you.